So when it comes to your blog name, you may be asking yourself, well, should I be really niche then in order to be really specific about what I write about? Yes and no. You can tell at Cleverpedia, not niche at all. It allowed Adrienne to change what she's writing about really easy. So if you aren't sure exactly what you will be blogging about, maybe try to come up with a name that allows you to be a little bit flexible. Otherwise, if you're really positive you want to write about something, for example, my blog, I knew I wanted to write about DIY projects and healthy living, then go ahead, make it niche. Naming your blog is actually one of those things that people get stuck on because it is difficult to switch. So what are a few factors you should consider when deciding on a blog name? First, keep it short and easy to say and spell. Now you may wonder, keep it easy to say, isn't this all digital? Well, you're going to be telling people about your blog, like I am to you today, DIY Home Health. So you really want to make it easy for people to say and understand. I actually told my mom when I first started the blog about my blog, and she said that she went to the site because I was telling it over the phone to her, and she's like, oh, strange, it has this weird icon on it. Where's your picture? And I'm like, oh, Mom, I don't think you're on the right side. And she ended up going to a completely different website because she misheard what my domain name was. So once again, make it easy to say, easy to spell. Spell it out both in just how you would actually write it as a blog name and as the domain name, because you may see as the domain name, it looks really confusing. Maybe you have like double letters in there that just, look weird or are confusing to read. Next, make it brandable. This is something I regret and not when I focused on a keyword, I didn't really focus on the fun brandability of the domain name or the blog name. So instead, I now use a tagline for branding, guiding you through adulthood. That allows me to really clarify what my vision is for the blog. And, you can do the same. Now with Blogging with Impact, it's really prevalent what we do. We teach about blogging. So we have blogging in the domain name right there. One of the ways that you make your site brandable is by using your logo and color swatches to really create a cohesive look to your blog. So as you can tell, we have our logo that has the hexagons in it or polygons, and we create those polygons and use it all across our site. So that's our way to kind of make it brandable. Next, your domain name should match your blog name. Do not create a domain name that has a different blog name. It's really confusing to readers. A lot of times they'll look up your blog name and be like, oh, I can't find it. That's because your domain name is different. And Google might not be able to put the two together unless you blog for years. And then, Google will recognize your blog name to your domain name eventually, but we highly don't recommend it to be different. Stick with .com. .com is what we call a TLD, top-level domain. There's .org, .net, .us, .global. There's so many different TLDs these days, but people are most familiar with .com. So unless you're in Canada or the UK where you have .uk, .ca, stick with .com, because when people hear your domain name, you don't want them going to, say, DIYHomeHealth.com when my real domain was DIYHomeHealth.org and not being able to find my domain name. Matter of fact, a lot of bloggers, after they get established and they're like, yes, we're sticking with blogging, a lot of them who do it full time, they actually buy all the domain names with the different TLDs. That means I would buy DIYHomeHealth.com, DIYHomeHealth.org, .net, .info, all the different ones. So if you eventually, your blog really takes off and you want to make sure that you keep that brand name, I would encourage you to go ahead and buy them and then just redirect that traffic. Of course, that's for later down the road. This course is really just to get you up and running. Next, avoid hyphens within the domain URL. So that would be like DIY-homehealth.com. A lot of times the hyphen can look really awkward in a URL, and it's harder to remember to include a hyphen. And there was stipulation that hyphens broke up the keywords, and therefore you wouldn't rank as well. Now, keywords don't have as much impact as they used to have in the domain name, but it does still have a little. You may find that sites that are really niche, I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, that maybe have their keyword in their domain name and that's all they write about, tend to rank really well when you type in keywords that relate to that specific topic. But then again, like I said, they're stuck to that topic if they have that. And, it's not as necessary now, as Google changes their algorithm up very, very often. Next, leave room to expand. We talked about Cleverpedia being a good name because it allowed Adrienne to be broad at first, write a whole bunch of different content to see what actually clicked with her audience, find coloring books as a niche, be able to write about that, and now she can expand as well. Again, if she just had Cleverpedia coloring books, she would be pretty stuck to just coloring books. So leave yourself just little room to expand just to make sure you don't get too niche. Also, make sure your domain name is available. Don't get your heart stuck on a particular domain name without checking it online. You can go to hover.com, or GoDaddy is also another popular site that people use. Bluehost, which is what we recommend since you get a free domain name usually when you sign up for your hosting account. You can look up your domain name in there, make sure it's available and doesn't cost a fortune. Domain names do vary in cost, and they actually vary in cost from site to site. Hover, might charge a little bit more for it than, say, GoDaddy. But of course, Hover usually has a better reputation than GoDaddy. Bluehost, they don't charge anything. They, give it to you free when you buy your hosting for the first year. And then, the following year they do charge. And maybe when they charge the following year, they charge a little bit more than what you would have gotten over at Hover. So keep that in mind in terms of what's available and how much it costs. And think long term, because it's kind of like renting. Sometimes they may up the price a little bit on hosting or on your domain name. So if you can buy multiple years, definitely do that, especially if you plan on blogging for a long time. And lastly, if you have an existing site, maybe it's your church site and you want to do a blog on that site, instead of doing a completely different website for your blog, just add your blog to that domain. Not only will it allow your church members to go and further their learning on your website, but also it will help your website rank better in the search results, because you remember Google loves fresh content, Google loves niche content, and it will begin recognizing your church as very authoritative on the subject. So if you can, start it on your existing site. Now, a few things to help you create your domain name that you can think about is these two formulas. The first one is use your name, your actual name, with what you want to blog about. For example, Josh in the jungle. Let's say Josh is a missionary in Africa, and he wants to write about his journey being a missionary in that area, helping preachers in that area. And so his name is actually going to be in the domain name, because the blog is actually about him and what he's doing in that country. So joshinthejungle.com would be really great. It's short. It's easy to say, it's easy to write down, very clear when you see it in a URL look, and it's kind of clear on what Josh does, but kind of also leaves a little bit of mystery, a little bit of room there for him to further expand. Another way is to use a noun of what your blog is about with a memorable adjective. So this is an actual site here, redletterchristians.org. They use .org because they're an actual organization and not necessarily just a blog. But I really love the example of this as a adjective plus noun domain name. So red letter would be the adjective, though it's a little bit unconventional adjective. And then Christians would be the noun. So try to think of a way that you can combine these different formulas with what you had in mind. And, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us about your domain name.